Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Denver Mensa Speaker Series. Today at our Denver Mensa Mega Meeting, we have Dr. Deborah Albert, who will be talking about wildlife photography. Take it away, Deborah.
Okay, let me share my screen and start the slideshow.
Oh my.
Come on, there we go. All right, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So let me just give you a little bit of background. I am basically a wildlife fanatic and really had no intentions of doing photography, and then basically got a lot of peer pressure from friends and coworkers to like, how could you go to these places and not take a camera? And in fact, the photograph behind me, I took. It was one of the first photographs I've ever taken. I went down to see emperor penguins, and I wasn't going to go with the camera. And one of my friends said, "How could you possibly do that without a camera?" And so I bought a little 3-megapixel point and shoot, which I can tell you the whole rest of the ship never let me live that down, and actually took that photograph with this little 3-megapixel point and shoot. But with that came sort of the photography bug. And as a result, I've been taking more and more photographs and trying to improve my photography. So this talk actually was first put together about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and it was in a nice chronologic order, and it was 80 photos. But since then, I've been to a lot of other places, and I've also, hopefully, I hope you'll agree, my photography has improved. So what I've done is put in some added more recent photos, and I've arranged it more geographically. So I'm just going to kind of run through the photos, give a little bit of background. Please interrupt me at any time with questions, either about the photo or about the area or anything in general. Just going to make this really informal. And thank you to Bill and Ann, who are suffering through this for the 3rd time. So here we go. So, oh, by the way, this is an osprey that I shot in when I was living in Wilmington, North Carolina. So as I mentioned, so the first sort of trip and first photography was for emperor penguins in Antarctica. And what you do most of the time is you go to the peninsula, which is this little point of Antarctica that sticks out towards South America. So most of the tours actually leave from a little town called Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city on the planet. And you then go across the infamous Drake Passage to get to Antarctica. And this is the same photo that I have behind me. And as I said, this was shot with a little 3-megapixel point and shoot. And the way that I was able to get this photograph is that penguins are totally fearless. I mean, they have no land predators. And so I was actually lying down on the ice because you're not allowed to approach them within 15 feet. But if you just lie there quietly or sit there quietly, they're very curious. And by the time I went to get up, I was literally in the middle of the colony. I was just surrounded. And this little guy actually walked over and just plopped down next to me. I mean, I could have just kind of scooped him up and taken him home, but what do you do with a almost 4-foot penguin in Tampa, Florida? So I left him there. So the next trip that I did was to the Silver Banks, which is, as you can see, off the coast of the Dominican Republic. And it is the primary calving area for the North Atlantic humpback whales. And it's one of only 2 places on the planet that you can actually swim with humpbacks, the other being Tonga. And this is actually one of the calves. So he's probably, he or she, I don't know which one it is about 3 weeks old, but still makes him 15 feet long, and he weighs a ton. So, and again, the calves are very curious, so they'll actually just come right over to eyeball you. And I have to say, it's a little intimidating because you sit there and you go, this is a little baby. Does he like know he's supposed to stop? And again, this is just an underwater, disposable point and shoot camera. So you can imagine, I mean, he was probably within about 6 feet. So it's for any of you I mean, it's just an exhilarating experience. So after that, I went to one of my favorite places on the planet. And I'm actually, hopefully, if this COVID thing settles down, I'll be going back in June of 2022. And that is Svalbard, Norway, which is, here's the mainland Norway. So it's actually a group of islands on the Arctic Circle, and is probably the best place on the planet to see polar bears. And that's what I went for. So at the time, again, these are some of the earlier shots, not the best camera in the world, but I still think, very interesting, to sort of see them, in their, I mean, you can see more polar bears if you go to Churchill, Manitoba, but you don't see them so much in sort of a more natural environment. Polar bears are actually considered marine mammals, and spend, most of their time on the ice and in the sea. And this sort of gives you an idea of, what the landscape is there. And this is a, mother and a little cub. Again, not a great camera. And they're, again, quite curious. So they'll come pretty close to the ship. I mean, this particular voyage, I was in a larger ship. We were about 120 passengers. So I'm on the deck above these people. So the whole thing sort of foreshortened. But I mean, this little guy actually like walked up and put his paws on the hull of the ship. And these are from a trip that I just did a couple years ago, which hopefully you can see better camera, better photographic skills, and a smaller ship. There's only 12 of us, so it's nice because you can really get eye level. And I mean, they're just amazing beasts. And then this is another bear. Actually, she had a cub up here behind her, who, again, global warming, and was sort of landlocked onto this island, waiting for, for more ice. And it's really kind of a sad, I mean, the difference in the 2 trips was about 8 years, and I could see, the difference in the amount of ice in the north. So, and this is another one their main diet is our seals, and we were very, bad for the seal, but very lucky to, have this. We didn't actually see the kill, but shortly thereafter, and so he obviously stayed there for quite a while. So I then, those were all, again, not full, except for those later pictures, not the full real camera gear. So I decided, I really need to go back to Antarctica and sort of do the normal trip, not just the emperors, but actually go to the Falklands, which are here, and South Georgia, and as well as the peninsula. And if any of you are thinking about going, I can tell you, that it's really worth it to spend the extra time and go to these these islands as well as the peninsula. And these are just a couple of the shots that I have from there. This is actually a leopard seal, which I know everyone thinks is, and actually she looks pretty intimidating there. But a couple of us actually got out of you go on little zodiacs, you know, traveling among the icebergs. And our driver said, hey, would anyone like to get on the ice with the leopard seal? And I leapt at the opportunity. I think there were 4 of us out of the 10 on the Zodiac, and we actually got off on the ice and slowly made our way towards her until she gave what a threat display, which is what this is, saying, you know, like, back off, you're on my ice. And we, of course, backed off. So, I mean, it's pretty intimidating. I mean, she's about 14 feet long, so it's a fairly intimidating animal. And these are Gentoo penguins. Again, you know, so what happens is, I mean, again, these are, you know, marine birds. I mean, they live their really almost most of their life in the sea, but they have to come ashore, you know, to have their chicks. And so the actual nests are way up above the hill. And so every day the parents need to make their way down to the sea, you know, to catch fish and bring it back for the chicks. And this photo, which I took actually only about 2 weeks after I bought my first real camera, won the 2017 National Audubon Society Photography Awards, which I entered on, like, on a dare. And when they called me and said, congratulations, you have won the grand prize in the National Audubon competition, I hung up on them. I thought it was a scam. So fortunately, I called them back. And so these are some later photos. Again, I hope you can sort of see better quality images. And this is a sea lion. And again, I mean, you can see the landscape is really as beautiful as the animals are. And in fact, this is sunrise, which is sort of a misnomer, because in the summer, when you're that far south, I mean, it never gets totally dark. So this was actually at 3 o'clock in the morning when the sun came up sort of full, and as opposed to just being sort of a grayish outside. And I rarely take landscapes, but it was just so beautiful and dramatic, I had to take a shot. So the next area that I want to talk about is Madagascar, which, as you all probably know, is a large island just off the coast of mainland Africa. And for a long time, I wasn't really going to go because it didn't have big animals like elephants and lions and giraffes and things like that. But finally I said, well, you know, for completeness, I really should go. And I have to say, I just absolutely fell in love with it. The lemurs, which that the only place on the planet that you can see lemurs is in Madagascar, are absolutely enchanting. So this is a sifak lemur, and what he's doing, he's way up in a tree, and I was there with this big zoom lens that I was, you know, turning back and forth to get the right zoom and the right focus and stuff like that. And he was imitating me. So he actually picked up his foot and was turning it in imitation. So anyone that thinks animals are like not smart. So he was doing the little, like the director thing, looking down at me. So it's not a great quality photo, but it was a magical moment that the two of us interacted. And this is my favorite lemur. It's called an Indri. It's only found in one forest in Madagascar. And most of you probably don't know anything about them because they do not survive in captivity. So they're just in this one area of Madagascar. They are the largest of the lemurs. They're about toddler size. And they're just, I mean, they're like big, I think like little panda bears. And they make the most amazing call. It sounds like whale song that they use to, because they live in like troops, and to call in the troop and to establish their territory. And when they start calling, you can hear it for 5 miles. When you're there in this forest, and all of a sudden this like eerie whale song like reverberates through the forest, it's one of the most amazing things I've ever experienced. And this is a little kingfisher. I wasn't that interested in birds early on, but I have to admit now I'm becoming more and more fascinated with birds, and particularly, not that we don't have some beautiful birds in the United States, but in places like Africa, the colors are just mesmerizing. So he's just I think one of the most beautiful birds that I've ever seen. And then there's also all these wonderful chameleons. This guy is actually quite large. It's about the size of your hand. But again, they're so beautifully, if it wasn't for the guides pointing them out, you know, I probably would have missed all of them, because they really do just camouflage so beautifully in the trees. And this is actually a leaf gecko. I don't know if you can see the animal. I can tell you that I stood there. The guide said to me, "Do you see the animal?" And I probably stood there for 10 minutes and I never saw him. So here's his head, and here are the eyes, and then the body goes out like this. Here's the tail, here's the hind legs, and the front legs are actually curled up under here. So, I mean, you can see the master of camouflage. I mean, just looking at it, I mean, I was looking right at him and I didn't see him. He's about a foot long. Just, you know, another amazing creature. And this is another chameleon. I just thought it was an adorable little picture because of the way he's, you know, looking at this little bee here. Again, you know, probably not going to win a photographic award, but it was a pretty special moment. And then this is another, so I think they're all together about 15 no, I think there are like 23 different kinds of lemurs. But among the more famous ones are the sifak, because they have this very fluffy fur, and the dark face with the white fur makes them very striking. And this is probably the best known lemur. It's the ringtail with a little baby. And here's another picture of the ringtail. And then this butterfly is bigger than the size of my hand. It's the biggest butterfly. I mean, I didn't even think butterflies could get that big, but I think any of you that know impatiens flowers, I mean, this is a little impatiens flower, so you can imagine how enormous this butterfly was. I mean, in fact, when it first flew by me, I mean, I thought it was a bird. And then this is a little baby sifak. So when they're first born, in their first couple of weeks, they actually cling to mom's underside. But then as they get a little bit older and a little bit braver, they move to the back, and then ultimately start moving around independently. And this is actually the whole family. So this is mom with the baby and dad. They are monogamous. And again, I mean, it's just enchanting. They're kind of a cross between, I think, like a monkey and a cat. They're I mean, you can just sit there for hours and hours and watch them jumping from tree to tree, and you know, the chittering to each other, and just absolutely one of the most enchanting animals, I think, on the planet. And sadly, like many disappearing. So, and this is a brown lemur. So again, I have many, many more, but I've got a lot to go through. So I'm just gonna little bits. So the next trip was to Baja California. And the main reason to go was for gray whales, but on the way we saw it's really a wonderful area for whales. So we had pods of orca, and of course a lot of sea lions. You can actually go and snorkel with the sea lions, which is always fun. But the main reason that you go is for the gray whales. So this is the calving area for the Pacific, North Pacific gray whales. And for some reason that no one, I think, really understands very well, and particularly in light of the fact that we almost eradicated their population from the planet, makes it even more puzzling to me, is that they bring the calves up to like meet the people. In fact, you sort of wonder like who's really watching whom, you know, like maybe it's really the human season for the gray whales rather than the gray whale season for the humans. But so this is a calf, about a 3 or 4 week old calf, because the mother is 45 feet long. And they bring them over to look at the people and get their noses scratched, and it's really amazing. So this whole lagoon, this is a big protective lagoon, which is where they come to have their calves. So this is a very small portion of mom's back, and then this is the baby just, you know, resting on, you know, taking a breather, resting on mom's back. And what they do is have the calves there, and then they wait there for about 6 to 8 weeks until the calves are strong enough to then move out and move back up to the north to the you know, the eating ground. So again, this is part of mom's just head, and then you can just see the baby resting right on here. And I mean, it's just magical to be that close. And again, here's just a closer shot. So this is a little bit of mom, and this is just, again, a little bit of baby's mouth. The eye is actually underwater. It's about there. So, but they'll just come really close, and you go out in these little zodiacs, and sometimes the mothers will actually come up under the zodiacs, which is, you know, really makes you feel small and insignificant. This was another little baby that came out to, you know, take a look at us. And this was just kind of fun. In the same setting, there was just this cormorant, and I watched him for probably half an hour to an hour struggle with this huge tilapia, which he kept trying to catch, and then he'd drop it and he'd get it again and then because they also need to orient it head first or they can't swallow it. So it took all this, like literally an hour for him to get this all oriented in the correct fashion so he could swallow it, but he got it down. And after I just told you, I almost never take scenery. Again, this was just a gorgeous sunset, and again, sort of this very rocky coastline. So I took a shot. So the next trip is to probably, maybe not so difficult for you guys in Denver, but for me, I think was the most challenging trip that I've ever done, because the average temperature was minus 40 degrees. And that's to Wahpus National Park, which is just a little bit south of Churchill on the Hudson Bay. And it is the main breeding area for polar bears, denning area for polar bears. And what you go for is this, which is to see a polar bear and her cub. Usually they have two, but this one only had one, when they first come out of the den. So this cub is about 4 months old, because they're born in the den. you know, and they're like, you know, like the size of a lima bean, and then eventually get a little grown up and big enough to come out. And mom, of course, this whole time has not been eating. So, you know, she's driven also by hunger to come out. And the reason that they're dirty like this is because the dens are actually dirt. I mean, mom initially digs down under the snow in, you know, and digs this den in the dirt. And so this isn't bear poop or anything, because she doesn't defecate while she's in the den. This is all just, you know, dirt from the den, and then ultimately they'll roll around and get this all off. I thought it was really interesting though, when I went the first time on this trip, there were 2 professional German photographers, and I mean, and it's really hard because you have to track the bears and figure out. And I mean, we literally went for the first 6 days and we didn't see anything. And when we finally spotted this bear, I mean, I was just ecstatic. And the German photographers didn't even get out of the van to take photos. And I went up to them when we got back to the lodge and I said, you know, is everything okay? Or, you know, is your gear all right? And what's going on? And the guy goes, dirty bear. I can't sell photos of dirty bears. So I guess it's different perspectives. I was just absolutely elated to see them. And then this is actually a repeat trip, which I thought, oh, you know, I only got to see 1 bear and 1 cub, so I'm going to go back. You know, everyone's telling me that's just terrible luck. Again, 7 days, no bears whatsoever. Day 8, which was actually the day before I was leaving, it started snowing. And I'm like, we're never going to find these bears because you can't track the bears when it's snowing, and, you know, and trying to find white bears in the snow and I can't even tell you how hard it is to photograph white bears against a white background when it's snowing. But somehow the trackers found, again, this mother, and she actually has 2 cubs, and it's just magical. It's just absolutely magical. Here's the 2.
Oh.
Even for them, it was cold for them. They were, I mean, normally they're out playing and romping around. It was actually -50 that day. And so even they were like, Mom, we're just too cold. We just want to snuggle. And again, this is, you can see how really tiny they are. So again, just magical experience.
Deborah,
So, yes.
hi, it's me, Anne.
Yeah.
I don't think you mentioned as to why you were so fascinated with the young animals. Can you give that background?
So I am, or I guess I should say now with COVID, I was a pediatric surgeon. So professionally, as well as my hobby, just has a fascination and a delight with babies. So with all of these animals, I guess you're seeing the trend that I tend to photograph mostly babies. So that's what Anne's alluding to. So, and in keeping with that, so the next trip, oops, I went backwards instead of, I have 9 cats, and they're all like walking on my desk. So they actually just did that. So the next place that I want to talk about is Île Sainte-Madeleine, which is a tiny island in the mouth of the St. Lawrence Seaway. You can see here's Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, and here's this little tiny island. And right off of this island, there are, in the winter, there are these ice flows that are where the harp seals go to pup. So this is those little tiny seal pups that unfortunately they're still clubbing, although it's better. And again, I mean, they're only a few days old, and they're very curious. So this is actually a friend of mine is lying down on the ice, and this little pup came over to check them out and check out the camera. So I kind of like this. I love, it's like I can see myself in the camera, and again, they're just adorable. I mean, obviously if you start going after them, they'll run away. But again, if you just sit there quietly, I mean, they'll kind of come right up. So, I mean, you can actually see my reflection. I don't know if that projects, but in this pup's eyes. So here you can see I'm standing here. So, I mean, they're just absolutely, I mean, they're just these little white, fluffy, and the mothers actually only stay for about 3 to 4 weeks. So the seal milk has this incredibly high fat content. These seal pups gain 5 pounds a day. And so they're just nursing for about a month, and then the mothers, go back to sea, and they leave the pups on their own for a while. And that's usually when the clubbing happens. And then, fortunately the survivors all go to sea. So the next place, sorry, I'm kind of moving along quickly here, I guess. The next place I want to talk about is the Pantanal. For those of you that don't know about it, it is the largest wetlands on the planet. As you can see, it's primarily in Brazil, but there is a little bit of it in Bolivia and Paraguay. Basically, this is the Amazon here. So the animals are very, very similar. The advantage of going to the Pantanal as opposed to going to the Amazon is that the vegetation in the Amazon is so thick that you often don't get to see the animals. I mean, like you go on one of these cruises and you go, oh, I heard the parrots in the trees, but I never really saw them. So in terms of being able to see the animals, you can do much better by going to the Pantanal. And the main reason to go is for the jaguars. So the jaguars are the 3rd largest cat on the planet, and one of the great cats, along with the tiger, lion, snow leopard, and the jaguar. And the thing that really makes them particularly interesting is that most cats kill by suffocation, by grabbing hold of the windpipe of their prey and cutting off their air. The jaguars are so powerful that they usually crush the spine or the skull of their prey. So they're really like I think of them as like leopards on steroids. And this is where I was really lucky on this trip to see a mother and her 2 probably 5 to 6 month old cubs. I mean, it's just, magical to see them. And they, like the tiger, love to swim. So they spend a lot of their time in the water. And that's the best way to see them, is actually in small boats. So the other animal that most people go to see, and it's one of my absolute favorites, is the giant otter. So, I mean, and they really are like giant otters. They can be 75 pounds, and they're very charismatic, very noisy. They live in medium-sized family groups, and obviously their main diet are fish. And this is just jaguar in the water. So I was really lucky. One day my group had gone on, and I opted to stay behind for a few days. And so it was just the boatman and me, and we left like at the crack of dawn, and we went way out beyond where most people go. And we're going along this little tributary that's only about 15 feet across. And all of a sudden I see I thought it was like a log floating in the water. And I'm sure he saw it as soon as I did, but I was like, stop, it was a good thing. And it turned out to be a jaguar swimming towards us. which was also a little disconcerting because I'm sure he could have gotten out of the water and into the boat and whatever, but I don't think that was really his intention. But so he went to one side and we would slowly go over to the other side and vice versa. And I was fortunate enough to watch him for over an hour. It was just really magical. And then again, I mean, the birds are extraordinary. So these are, as I'm sure probably all of you know, toko toucans. And I call this synchronized food tossing. So it's going to be a new Olympic sport coming up. But again, it was just, I mean, this was on a feeder, so you could say, you know, maybe it was a little, because you can see they have like these little pellets that they're eating. But it was just, I mean, to be able to see these birds in the wild and up close was magical. So that the other otter picture that I showed you was from a trip about 5 or 6 years ago. This was from a couple years. So again, this is another one of those giant otters. And I just like, I mean, look at these claws. But they're incredibly charismatic and, you know, always like any otter, you know, doing all kinds of antics and swimming and popping up. And, you know, I mean, he didn't have to, you know, sort of be, it's almost like he was looking at us like, you know, this is mine, you can't have it. So, and this is another type of otter that's there. It's called the Neotropical Otter. And it's about the size of our river otters. And it's really interesting because the guide said that they are just like really ferocious. Like he's not afraid of the giant otter, which is about 5 times the size of this otter, but that these guys like just have a really, I guess, nasty temper. And, you know, if they're cornered or something, can just be like really vicious. And this is a caiman, which is the South American version of a crocodile. So there's crocodiles, alligators, and caimans. The caimans are a bit small, the smallest of the 3, but can still be, you know, pretty good size and pretty formidable, and is one of the main prey of the jaguars. So I have not had the opportunity to see this personally, which is why I'm hoping to see it when I go back in 2022. But it's amazing to think, you know, that a crocodilian who's totally at home in the water is the main prey of a big cat. So that's how well these jaguars swim, is they actually, and if you have a chance, there are a couple videos on YouTube that are all you have to do is like jaguar and catches caiman, and you can see this jaguar like swim, like the caiman will be sitting on a sandbar and the jaguar will get into the water and swim up behind him, grab him, literally one bite, break his spine, and then carry him back off into the water or up the riverbank. I mean, it's just an extraordinary phenomenon.
And where did you fly into to get there? Asuncion or?
So you fly first into Sao Paulo, and then from there you go to, and I'm blanking on the town, Cuiabá, C-U-I-B-A. So you take a little plane into Cuiabá, and then usually you have to then drive in to get into the like main part of the Pantanal.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal. I mean, I've been to the Pantanal now 3 times, and I'm going back for a 4th in 2022. I mean, that's how extraordinary it is. I mean, the wildlife, the birds, the landscape, it's absolutely phenomenal. And one of the phenomenal animals is the tapir. This is a tapir, which are very shy. They tend to be nocturnal. And this was actually almost at sunset that we managed to see him in the water. You know, quite a large animal, but incredibly shy. I've only seen about 4, you know, in all the trips. So this was a really lucky sighting. And again, from a small boat. So that's why it could be eye level. And this is just one of another, I sort of took this as another neotropical. It's just kind of like, let sleeping otters lie. Because like I said, they're just vicious. So now we're gonna go to like my favorite place, which, you know, like if I only had one trip left, it would be back to Africa. I've been to most of the sub-Saharan countries. I mean, I haven't been to Burundi or Rwanda, but I've been to Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, South Africa, and Namibia. And I technically didn't go to Angola, but there's a river that separates Namibia and Angola, and we went across so we could, you know, put our feet and say we've been in Angola. So, so I'm just going to show you some pictures from there. So this is a gibbon, which you know, most people don't. I mean, I had never, like, what, you know, what kind of, you know, monkey is this? But they're just adorable. And they have these big white bushy tails and then this white face. And the babies are just absolutely enchantingly adorable. This is a red-billed hornbill. There's many different kinds of hornbills there. I think there's 6 or 7 species, but the most common are the red-billed and the yellow-billed. So the yellow-billed's called the flying banana, and the red-bill's called the flying chili pepper. So for obvious reasons, when you see it fly, I mean, it looks like a flying chili pepper. And this is one of my favorite photographs that I've taken. So this guy is actually a Marshall eagle. It's the largest eagle in Africa, and quite a bit bigger than our eagle. And he actually killed a small deer and carried this deer up into this tree. So this is like on a treetop, like a 20-foot high treetop. And this gang of ravens decided to try and dive bomb him to get him off of the kill. And I can't tell you how many shots it took, but I finally managed to catch a shot. Now, obviously the raven looks huge because he's so much closer. I mean, he is literally a fifth, if not smaller, the size of the eagle. But it was just fascinating to watch these ravens dive bomb him from every angle. And it's just such a striking bird. I mean, it's probably my favorite bird, I think. And then, of course, what everyone goes for are the lions. I mean, I can sit and watch a pride of lions for hours and hours, and especially the interactions of the cubs who get into all kinds of antics. And then this is, again, you know, sort of a famous part of it is the migration across the Mara River of the wildebeest. And you can see there are a few zebra in there as well. And it's really, it is fascinating to watch. I mean, these massive herds of animals. And, you know, and then of course, as you probably all know, there are these huge monster crocodiles in this water, you know, waiting to try and catch somebody as they go across. Fortunately, I didn't see anybody get killed. I don't really like to do that. And then this is another eagle, the African fish eagle, that's much more similar in size and even coloration to our eagle. Just really a beautiful bird. And then I know hyenas have gotten a really bad rap, but they're one of my favorite animals. They really are not the way Disney portrays them. They are very loyal in their clans and loving parents. And these are two puppies that are probably about 4 months old, 5 months old. They're actually born almost jet black and then eventually lose this black and start getting the adult brownish fur. But I mean, they're again, very curious. I mean, we were literally parked like right here. You can, this is actually the shade from our vehicle, and these two puppies just kind of walked up to check us out. And then this is also, I just love this shot, the, you know, evening sunset and the big male lion. So we followed him from a kill for about 3.5 hours because we knew eventually he was going to work his way down to the river to get a drink. So I can tell you the one thing that my photography, if nothing else, has done is give me an appreciation for what like these National Geographic guys do and things, and just takes incredible patience and perseverance to get some of these shots. And then this is really cute. These are two brothers, and the one was actually lying down and the other one came in from wherever he had been gallivanting or whatever, and they stood up and rubbed, you know, like house cats, you know, rubbed against each other and, hey bro, and how you doing, and what's, you know, and I mean, it, you know, it just really belies some of their, you know, the fierce nature and, you know, just, you know, cold-blooded killers. And, you know, I mean, it was just, you know, it's just wonderful. And then this was a young baby elephant who was probably about maybe a month old, who just kept running back and forth underneath mom's belly. I mean, again, we just sat there for, you know, for the longest time, just watched him run back and forth and back and forth. It's, you know, almost like, wee, look at me. And, you know, it was just adorable. And this is, again, you can see the theme, young animals. So this is a young leopard, you know, mom's gone off to hunt. And she's actually way up in a tree. And you can see how beautifully camouflaged. I mean, again, if it weren't for the guides, you know, like the guys go by and go, oh, look, leopard. And you're like, where, what, you know, you know, I never would have found her on my own. And these are wild dogs. Again, probably one of my favorite animals. They're really the top predators in Africa. They're the most successful predators in Africa. And very strong family units. They will actually bring food back for if one of their members is injured. And kind of, I mean, there is an alpha pair that does the breeding, but the whole pack contributes to raising the puppies, and it's just amazing to watch them. And then just a little bit of action. So this was a buffalo kill, and in the Lion Society, you know, the males are really the top dogs. So the females do most of the work. They, I mean, not exclusively, but they do a lot of the hunting. But the males come in and get to eat first. And if the females get a little too overeager or whatever, you can see, I mean, he was about to just smack her. So, and then this was taken in South Africa. There is an area called the Timbavardi where there are still leucistic or white lions occurring in the wild. There are not very many of them. They think there are probably only maybe 10 of them. It's a double recessive gene. So obviously some degree of inbreeding's needed to get the white tigers. But, and most of the, since it's a recessive gene, most of the cubs will turn out to be the normal color. But I just kind of love this because it's like the cubs looking like, Mom, you're embarrassing me. and it just shows really well this white coat against his normal coat. And this is just a young leopard in South Africa. It was really very tragic. You can see that this whole area has been burned. One of the things that the poachers do is they start fires, and the rangers then have to run to control the fires. And so while the rangers are controlling the fires, the poachers poach in a different area. Just kind of, again, one of the tragedies of what we're doing to the wild creatures. And young rhino, the white rhinos, which are actually not white, it's actually for the Afrikaans for wide, because they have this wide straight across mouth, as opposed to the black rhinos that are browsers and have like more of V-shaped mouth, are fairly docile. I mean, don't do something foolish, but I mean, I've actually gone tracking them on foot, whereas the blacks have a pretty bad temper, and you wouldn't want to do that. So, but it was just fun to, to be fairly close to this little guy. And then this is another eagle. This is a battler eagle, which again, I just think is so, look at this red feet and the red face, you almost go like, who thinks of these things, like just stunning to see. And again, I don't remember exactly how many eagles there are, but it's something like there are 20 different eagles in Africa, as opposed to our 2. So it's pretty striking. And this is a wild dog puppy. You can see by the great big ears. It was, just again, I felt very privileged to be able to come across a pack that had a group of youngsters. And, the proverbial cheetah. And again, another just little tiny elephant. And again, as you probably all know, elephants are a matriarchal society. So the breeding herds, every once in a while, a male will come in, but when they get to a certain age, they're thrown out. And, raising an elephant is a difficult thing. So most of the time it's mom and auntie, one of the older siblings that help raise the calf. And this was just kind of fun. This is a yellow-billed oxpecker, and they're really an integral part of the ecosystem there, at eating ticks and various insects off of rhinos and giraffes and hippos and buffalo. But I just thought it was fun with this guy kind of pulling the hair of this giraffe. And this is another one of my favorite birds. This is a carmine bee eater. They actually are migratory into Southern Africa. And you can see, I mean, just stunning color. And when you get to a whole colony of these, it's just like, watching these red roses almost flying all over the place. And this is just another little lion cub that I love. Look at the size of his paw. He's going to be a big boy one day. And then I don't know if this video is going to play, but I hope so. I added this in because I wanted something extra for Anne and Bill, and to just give you, because I think you don't really get a feel sometimes for it if you just look at still photographs. So this was actually, this one pride of lions had killed a buffalo, and this other pride of lions came in to try and take over the kill. And I hope this plays. Have your sound up. What happens when the male comes in? Did that play for you guys, I hope?
Yes, great.
Okay. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to. I wanted to. Okay, so the next place that I'm going to talk about is Australia. Obviously, a very big place to cover, especially when you have limited time. I spent about 6.5 weeks, but managed to get to a lot. I mean, went from Kakadu all the way along this coast and down into the Flinders Range and across into Perth, but did not get all the way up on the other side, and fortunately got to Tasmania as well. So this is one of the flying foxes, again, very misunderstood and often persecuted by the local people, and also captured for bushmeat, but really harmless. They eat fruit. You can see this is the nursing baby here. Here's the head and the ear. And I mean, I think they're just magical creatures. And then these are wallabies. They're two fighting. I kind of like this photo because it's almost like the one is a referee going like no hitting below the belt. But again, I mean, you could just for endless amount of time, you can just sit, and these guys went at it and punched each other. And it was just, I mean, I wish I had taken a video. It was quite remarkable. And then this guy is a male cassowary. It's one of the largest birds on the planet. Second behind only ostriches and rhea, I think. And the females are actually even bigger than the males. And the other interesting thing about it is that the males raise the chicks. So you can't see it, but the chicks are actually hidden back here in the thicket. They're sort of a brown and a tan colored so that they blend in. Although I can't imagine anybody coming after the chicks with this as a protector. I mean, if there was any question that birds have evolved from dinosaurs, I think this bird clearly answers that question. I mean, look at the feet and the talons on this guy. And they actually have been known to disembowel people. They're about 5.5 feet tall. And this was, again, just an unbelievably lucky sighting. I mean, we went out with the guide, and the guide said, "What do you want to see?" And I said, "Oh, I want to see a cassowary." And he goes, "I haven't seen a cassowary in like 8 weeks, so sorry, what else do you want to see?" And just pure luck, this guy came out of the forest. You can see it's pretty dense. And when we stopped the car, he immediately told the chicks to disappear. And he didn't stay around very long. So this was like a really fast, lucky shot. But I mean, look at the coloration and this little helmet that he's wearing. I mean, I think really more dinosaur than bird. And this is just a little bee eater. Again, just, gorgeous colors. And this is a blue-throated sunbird. So they don't have hummingbirds, they have sunbirds. So that's sort of our hummingbird equivalent. And then I just got finished telling you I almost never take landscapes, but this is that Flinders Range. I mean, it was just so beautiful with the sun coming up and the purple haze on the mountains. And then this is a sheep ranch. So this is a classic Australian sheep ranch. So I just had to take that shot. And this is one of those, it's not a rhea, I just blanked out. Oh my God, terrible. Memory loss is a terrible thing. Anyway, these are the second largest birds on the planet, and usually quite shy. And I don't know why he decided to just kind of come down the hill at us. But he did. And again, I mean, he's like well over 5 feet tall. So it was pretty intimidating. And I don't know why this keeps going backwards. Okay. And this little guy, I mean, Australia is known for having these very rare, weird creatures. And this little guy is called an echidna. Also very hard to see, very lucky to see this little guy. And they're sort of the Australian equivalent of a porcupine, and mostly dig for grubs and roots and things like that, which is what he's doing here in the dirt. So I actually had to like get down and lie flat in the ground to get this one. So, and then of course everyone knows the koala. What's unusual about this picture is that his eyes are open. Koalas sleep 22 hours a day. And so to try to find one in the daytime with his eyes open, so he actually, I guess, was a little curious and kind of opened his eyes and climbed down the tree a little bit to look at us. So I think, because almost all my other koala pictures are with their eyes shut. And this was just on the shoreline, a little sea lion pup waiting for mom to come back. And this was also on the shore. It was really interesting because, you know, I don't think of having kangaroos on the shoreline, but we had actually gone to the near Perth to go swim with whale sharks, and we were staying at this little camp on the beach. And I got up one morning and there was this mother. In fact, I'm not sure who startled who more, because we just kind of like I came around the corner and there she was, and she hopped off, but fortunately stopped long enough to turn around and look back at me. And then the little Joey popped his little head out. So this is also one of my favorite pictures. And then this little guy is a butcher bird. He's not very, but talk about attitude. You know, I mean, here's this little bird that's, you know, probably the size of a mourning dove. And, you know, I'm walking down the path and he was like trying to pick a worm or something out of the thing. And instead of flying off, he just turned around at me like, what are you doing in my path? You know, like, get out of my path. You know, you're disturbing me. And I mean, I just thought it was just amazing. And again, this is like in the water, more sea lions. And this is an albatross, which actually was, other than when I went to Antarctica, the only other time that I've seen an albatross. And just incredible birds. I mean, they're designed, you know, to just fly without hardly ever beating their wings, and they can go miles and miles and miles at a time. Almost never. The only time they come to land again is you know, to have their chicks, and other than that, they're out over the open sea. And that was on the way to Tasmania that I saw the albatross. And this is the only picture. I normally never take photographs of animals that are not in the wild. But my attempts at taking, this is a Tasmanian Devil, were very futile because they're very nocturnal. So the few photographs I have of them in the wild, it's like, you see that little black streak across the road? That was a Tasmanian Devil. So I did take, this was in a sanctuary. And they're really, I mean, they're not that big an animal. I mean, they're only about 20 pounds, 25 pounds, but they are pretty ferocious. And they make, when they're eating, they make this unbelievable, like nightmarish sound, which is where the name comes from, because the early settlers, I guess, heard this horrible screaming sounds in the bush and figured it must be the devil. So that's that. So the next place that's also near and dear to my heart that I've also been about 5 times, and again, hope to get back to in this lifetime is India, predominantly northern India, Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, since that is the best place on the planet to see tigers. And I think of all the animals that I have seen, and I've seen quite a few, none is as striking in the wild as a tiger. There's just something about the way they move, you know, it's just like, I mean, they walk through the landscape like they own it. And I guess, you know, they do, but it's just really surreal to see a tiger in the wild. And I've been fortunate to see quite a few. I mean, this is probably the biggest male that I've ever seen. But there's also lots of other wonderful things, great birds. This is their spotted deer, which is, you know, somewhat similar to our deer, except that they never lose the white spots. So the fawn looks very similar to, you know, to a whitetail or a mule-tailed deer, but the adults retain those, the white spots. And this is a common kingfisher, which is, it's funny because, I mean, they are like everywhere. And everyone goes, ah, you know, it's just another common kingfisher. But again, just such a striking bird. And this is a drongo, racket-tailed drongo. For the, you can see these tail feathers. And the tree that he was in is called the Fire of India. So you can imagine these blossoms, you know, on these trees. I mean, it literally almost looks like, you know, the trees on fire. And this is a small langur monkey. He's sitting, so mom's here with her arm here. He was sitting in her lap and got very curious and brave and peered around the corner to look at us. And these are hornbills, pied hornbills. They're quite large birds. And I just think, again, you know, it's just so, I mean, you know, who thinks of this? You know, what possible, you know, purpose does this have other than, you know, so this is the male. So you can see he has a slightly bigger bump. And this is the female in courtship. So this is kind of like, will you marry me? But I mean, what incredibly striking birds. And then these are among my favorite. These are Indian rollers. There are, I think, 5 different breeds of rollers. There's a European roller, there's a lilac-breasted purple roller. These are the Indian rollers. And what's really remarkable about this photograph is it's probably 2 pair that are fighting over territory. The guide said he had never seen like 4 of them together like that, interacting like that. So it just makes it kind of striking. And you know, and the colors really are that vivid. They're just extraordinary. And then these are more recent trip, again, more tigers. I mean, they're just stunning animals. And this little guy, this is a brown fishing owl. So at the time of year that I went in April is pre-monsoon, and it's really not supposed to rain. I mean, you know, maybe an occasional sprinkle. And for some reason that, you know, who knows why, but we just had a torrential downpour. And this poor little bird was just sitting on the thing. I mean, just totally drenched. I mean, I just think he looks so pathetic. It's like, what's going on? It's not supposed to rain now. I don't understand. And then this is the quintessential cockfight. Peacocks are native and wild in India. That is where they come from, although with so many running around this country, you wouldn't know it. And this is 2 males. As you can see in their full breeding plumage, they actually lose these tail feathers after the breeding season, and they're, you know, fighting over territory and females. And then this was just a very fortunate sighting, unfortunately, well hidden, but that's what they do is they hide. But this was a mother, and she actually had another cub in here behind her, but with two, again, probably 4 or 5 month old tiger cubs. That was just sort of magical to watch them. And then I kind of love this because this is what it looks like. So you can imagine every time a tiger pops out somewhere, there are these, everybody's in vehicles like this on either side. And, I sort of feel almost like, the tiger's looking back at me going like, really? But, you can see that's how everybody is in these things. And it's amazing. I mean, the tigers really get habituated to having people there. I mean, if they don't want to be seen, I mean, believe me, that you won't see them. But they like to walk on the roads because it's easier than in this thick jungle. And they literally just kind of pop out, and he proceeded to walk, right past these people, which it's very extraordinary to be within 3 or 4 feet of a tiger. So not to neglect this part of the world, the other place that I love to go is Alaska. And actually I was supposed to be there now, but no, not now. I guess actually it was in the summer, but COVID has sort of squashed that. So one of the wonderful places, I mean, obviously you can do the inside passage kind of thing, which is through here and Glacier Bay. But if you really want to see bears, which is the main thing that I went for, the best place to do it is here in Katmai and Kodiak and Kenai. And this is a couple of bear cubs, boys will be boys. And when they're this young, when they're still cubs that were born that year, they're still nursing and mother's providing everything. So they don't have anything to do except play and roughhouse, and, mom takes care of everything. And this is mom fishing. So what she's there for is the salmon fishing. And I can tell you, it's really remarkable, to see the largest land. Well, I mean, polar bears are bigger, but not, that much. To see this huge, powerful animal, running towards you in the water is really kind of heart-stopping. And these are more little cubs of the year. You can see they still have those little white collar. So mom's down the hill fishing, and there are no real trees around here, so she can't send them up a tree like black bears do. So she sends them up this little hill and says, you go on up there and sit there while I'm at working. And then I love this guy. This is like another day at the office, But it was interesting because the guide said, you can always tell the successful bears because they've learned to work smarter and not harder. So there was actually a young female working this water as well. And she kept chasing the salmon, and this guy would just like sit there, and then the salmon would almost, to escape the other bear, like jump into his mouth. So he was just sitting there waiting, letting her do all the work. And here you can see this one just caught the salmon. And so you're not that close. I mean, I'm obviously using a long lens, although I did have one large boar walk within about 5 feet of me, which was a little intimidating. But they're so intent on the salmon and eating and bulking up in preparation for the winter that they really don't care that you're there. So the other place that's really fun to go, which probably most of you have been, is Yellowstone. But Yellowstone is particularly magical in the winter. And I was hoping to see wolves, but unfortunately only got to see coyotes, but they're still pretty amazing against this snowy backdrop with these big, thick winter coats. And I actually really like coyotes. I know they get a bad rap as well, but I think they're incredibly intelligent and great survival skills and whatever. And then again, you know, these ravens are everywhere. Every time there's a kill or anything, you know, the ravens move in en masse. And again, the landscape is just extraordinary because you have all these thermals that, I mean, obviously when you go in the spring and the summer and the fall, you can see some of the steam, but nothing like it is in the winter. So you can see this is all steam rising off of the thermals there. And then there's just this lone buffalo trying desperately to find something to eat in that meadow. And even that's really impressive to see them using these big heads, you know, digging into the snow to find a little morsel to eat.
That's a bison.
Yeah, it's so just a little bit of, so I'm now in Charleston, West Virginia, but I was living in Wilmington, and one of my favorite places to photograph is up here in northeastern North Carolina, which actually has the highest concentration of black bears in the country. And I mean, I went up there for one long weekend and saw over 100 bears. So this is quite a big boy that stood up to see what we were doing. And, you know, and like any, I mean, you have to be careful. They're fairly comfortable around people, but again, it just depends. I mean, some of them you stop the car and they take off like bullets, you know, and they can run up to 45 miles an hour. So you're not going to outrun them. But some of them are just curious and kind of know that you're not a threat. And if you're quiet and calm and you know, you can get fairly close. And I love this with the mom and the two little cubs standing up. I mean, believe me, mom is enormous compared to these two little cubs, but she's sitting down in the grass and they're both like standing up to see what's going on. And here's 3 little cubs. Mom was just off to the side here. And then actually in Wilmington, there's a lovely park called Airlie Gardens. And every year there are 2 pair of red foxes that have dens there. And if you kind of go when there are not a lot of people around, and again, sit there for hours waiting for the kits to get brave enough to come out of the den, then you get stuff like this. And that's mom and one of the kits. And of course, being on the water, on the shoreline and the beach, you know, tons of osprey everywhere, which are also fun to photograph. And this is actually a nest. So the parents have bright yellow eyes and the chicks have orange eyes. So this is mom feeding the chicks. And this nest is actually on one of the mile markers in the intercoastal waterway. And then this is actually, I hope this is going to play. This is actually my home here. This is my garage door. And my front door is right behind here. And I put, these are deer feeders that I put out for the deer and the raccoons. And some of you, I know this is a little controversial, but this is a visitor that I had. And that's what he thought of my camera. So bear 1, camera 0. Whoops, sorry. And this is a coyote. The wolves actually made the buffalo kill, but the coyote came in to scavenge. And then again, here are all the ravens. So that's obviously not in Charleston. That's back in Yellowstone. And I think that's it. How did I do time-wise? Okay. Questions? Everyone's asleep. No, are you there?
Yes.
It was beautiful.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
You mentioned, I think you were on a tour or on a cruise. What cruise lines or tour lines do you use?
It depends for what. Which were you talking about?
Mostly I was thinking of the South America.
So, so for the South America, for the Pantanal, I've actually gone with 3 different groups, because, you know, it kind of the logistics, it's very hard to do by yourself. So I've gone with 3, well, one time I did go by myself, but again, it was, the logistics were difficult. So the other 2 times I went with groups that were run by professional photographers.
Oh.
But it's now a very popular thing to do. And it's not hard to find a good organization to go with. And if you want, I mean, feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to give you recommendations.
Thank you. This is just incredible photography. I just am in awe of every single picture. They just,
Oh, well, thank you. That's very sweet.
It was cool. I'm not a nature person, but you made it awesome.
Well,
I do a
thanks.
lot of wildlife and this and that photography, but it's all just my snap camera. It's nothing like this.
Yeah, well, you don't see all the ones that get deleted, so, you know. And there are
Well,
a lot
I think
of
the
those.
photos are amazing.
Oh, I
I actually have a
believe it.
degree in animal behavior, and you don't get to see all this so well presented, and the patience you must have to get all these wonderful shots.
Yeah, it's well, again, I mean, a lot of it's luck. A lot of it's luck, and then, you know, having good guides, and yeah, and a lot of patience. Like I said, some of these shots, you know, literally sat for hours, you know, waiting, you know, like for the leopard to wake up and, you know, come down out of the tree and that kind of thing. So, but you know, all of the places that I mentioned are like some, you know, are like my favorites, and all that I hope to even get back to again. So.
And what lenses do you normally take with you? Like, do you have like a 600 or a 400, or you have like a 100 or 500?
So
or
I, you know, I'm 70 years old, so I can't carry the great big lenses anymore. So I'm actually, my go-to lens now is the Tamron 150 to 600 on a crop camera body. So the reach is about 900 millimeters.
right.
Because I can handhold that. Because I just find, you know, I mean, I used to have an 800 lens, but it weighed 12 pounds, and I just couldn't, you know, I just can't lift it anymore. And, you know, and then you have to have, you know, the tripod or a monopod, and you know, like, for example, on many of these trips, and also obviously it's a lot of money. So I have a friend who has like the top of the line Canon gear. I mean, she's got the $16,000 lenses and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, and she can't hand hold them. I mean, she has to use a tripod or a monopod or whatever. And there have been multiple instances, like, for example, those 4 Indian rollers, where I'm sure had she been able to get it with the better glass, it would have been a better photograph, but she just couldn't swing it around fast enough. So I just find, you know, most of the time I'm hand holding. So I just, you know, need smaller, lighter stuff. I really manage the big lenses anymore.
Wow.
Thank you. It's good to know. And plus, when you're traveling, to carry all of that stuff is just
Yeah, I mean, I
it's
traveled
pain.
with, yeah, I mean, I traveled with that 12.5 pound lens for a while. I can't even tell you who I had to bribe, to get it on the plane and all that kind of stuff. But it just got to where I just, I couldn't haul it through the airport. I couldn't, it just became a physical impossibility. And now, like you said, the airlines, are getting stricter and stricter on what they'll let you, take on the plane, and all these weight restrictions and stuff. And so unless you're really a professional photographer, and I mean, like in Africa, when I had the big lens, most of the time you're flying in these small planes. I mean, I had to buy a seat for my camera gear.
Oh, gosh.
yeah, because they weigh everything. So
Yeah.
it's hard.
Camera taking the pictures I do.
I'm sorry?
I guess I'm okay with my little snap camera. I have a little Canon.
Yeah.
Easier to carry.
I mean, obviously some of these things, I wouldn't never get if I, didn't have a fairly, long reach, because, obviously the animals run away or you disturb their behavior. But, I just, and there's no, like, I just had a big discussion today, as a matter of fact, with a, well-known photographer in South Africa, and he was saying, oh, Deborah, you should really get, this lens and that lens and whatever. And, I just said, first of all, it's an enormous amount of money. And second of all, I mean, it just weighs too much. I just, you can't do it. So
the picture behind me is
Can't hear you, Sarah.
kind of pictures I take with, the picture behind me is the kind of pictures I take for scenery.
yeah, no, it's beautiful. And, that, the famous saying that the best camera is the one that you have with you. So
That's true. So the last year and a half, my photography is degenerated into puppy pictures. So
yeah, well, the picture behind you is gorgeous. So
which means I should probably go because the puppy. I took that one last month.
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I think people get very gear crazy, and I think if it's your profession, I understand, but if your income's depending on it and all that kind of stuff,
Oh, I
but
do.
but it's just like, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna go spend $50,000 on camera gear. And so especially when the rate limiting step is really the idiot behind the lens. So
Deborah, I just marvel at how patient you are, like to lie in the snow to take those cubs, and you just get the behaviors so beautifally. Really
Oh, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, well, I think, with wildlife, that's the, I mean, and believe me, I know I have a long way to go, but I'm trying. It's, it's like, if you don't, I mean, obviously a portrait, a beautiful, like that one, with the golden background and the head of the tiger. I mean, I, felt very lucky to get that, but I think the big thing is to, get the behavior, to get something that gives you a little bit of the, personality, of the animal, so that I mean, I know we're not supposed to anthropomorphize them, but, I mean, I think the truth is that there's nothing wrong with that, and that they really, they do have feelings, and they do have a lot more in common with us than they don't. And, that if you can project that, I think that's what really makes the photo, more than the technical, like I said, I mean, the one behind me, was shot with a 3 megapixel point and shoot. I think it was a $50 camera. So
Well, and I love this from a behavioral perspective, because look at how many different behaviors you have in one shot.
Oh, yeah.
I love, I know the coyote and the thing, and I would have preferred to have gotten the wolves, but hopefully next time. So
I'm gonna have to go because my puppy wants attention.
Are there people who go who don't take cameras, but just go to observe the animals?
oh, absolutely. So my first 5 trips to Africa, I did not own a camera. So the photography is really recent, and I have to admit that there are times when, like, for example, so the advice that a photographer gave to me once is, if you want to really get the shot, never put the camera down, always be ready at any moment. And I just can't do that, because to me, sitting there and being there and watching the animal is more important than getting the shot. So I miss a lot of shots because the camera's sitting in my lap, because I'm just sort of being there with the animal. And there are definitely times when I've thought about, what the heck with it, I'm just not going to even struggle with all this camera gear and bring in all this stuff. And when I went to Africa before, all I needed was the clothes on my back, and now I need 60 pounds of gear and whatever. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, to me, it's the experience is so much more important than the photograph.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Indeed.